This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi.
The trial of Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger, it's a case that we've been following for quite some time. It's captivated the nation. It's captivated all of us, and it raises questions about the justice system and the red flags that we should all be paying attention to. It's a story of a man who was employed as a teaching assistant at Washington State University and accused of killing 4 undergraduate students at the nearby University of Idaho. The trial is now faced with the possibility of being moved hundreds of miles away due to fears that local jurors would be too much affected by the massacre to try him fairly. And it's a fair question to ask. Granted, yes, the 25,000 people who live in Moscow likely all know the case by now. And Kohberger is entitled to a fair trial of a jury of his peers, no matter how damning the evidence may be. He's expected to appear in the Latah County Courthouse in Moscow on June 26 of 2023 to enter his plea into the slayings of the 4 University of Idaho students who were stabbed to death at that off-campus home in Moscow, November 13th. If he pleads not guilty, the trial date will be set. But the question remains where the trial will take place. The slaying shocked, of course, the rural Idaho community, and either the prosecution or the defense could file a motion to change the venue, which could include Lewiston, Coeur d'Alene, or the state capital of Boise. Case, of course, garnering all that publicity. And in January 2023, Latah County Magistrate Judge Megan Marshall issued a sweeping gag order barring attorneys, law enforcement agencies, and others associated with the case from talking or even writing about it. Gag order was put in place to protect Kohberger's right to a fair trial. Many felt this was not fair to the families and those grieving, wanting to have a voice. But coalition attorney Wendy Olson has argued that more speech does not mean a less fair trial, and that other remedies like a change in venue, jury instructions, and jury sequestration can address any potential jury taint without offending the right to speech. The decision to move the trial will be up to the judge, and typically at the request of the defense, not the prosecution. The main argument for a change of venue is the effect of a pretrial publicity, which obviously this has on potential jurors. Latah County Prosecuting Attorney Bill Thompson believes that an unbiased jury could be found in Moscow, but former Idaho Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor David Leroy points out that with so much attention on the case, finding that jury in Latah County without previous opinions could be difficult, if not nearly impossible. Every defendant in a criminal case is entitled to a trial by a jury of peers. That is important to remember. We throw that out and go, who cares? He's a horrible human being. Well, then you're also throwing out the entire justice system. Jurors must approach any jury service as unbiased and without opinions formed in advance of the case as possible. It's difficult in a case like this where it is so well known. And I would almost argue that almost anywhere in Idaho, people are very much going to know this case. A jury will ultimately be found somewhere, but we do have to get to the first step of what is he going to plead? Discovery is what they're going through right now. They're trying to figure out the ins and the outs and what kind of evidence exists and what could potentially come out in trial. Should there be the hearing come June, unless, of course, a grand jury is put together before then, which would speed things up a little bit. We'll find out exactly where this case goes, what direction it heads to. Kohberger, of course, arrested December 30th by a SWAT team at his parents' home in Pennsylvania as they moved to search his apartment at Washington State University. He's previously indicated that he believes he will be exonerated, even recently saying it again. But authorities have found several pieces of evidence in his apartment, including hair strands, a computer tower, as well as receipts from Walmart and Marshall's. The home where the students were murdered had a significant amount of blood from the victims, and investigators believe that the killer would have had blood evidence on their body or clothing. Kohberger's offices at Washington State University were also searched, but nothing there was seized by the officers. Court documents also reveal that Kohberger turned his phone off the night of the murders in the alleged attempt to cover his tracks, literally at the time of the crimes, and then turn it back on. Cell phone data even shows him returning to the scene of the crime hours after it was committed. There's even photos that allege it might be his vehicle returning to the scene of the crime. Whether or not those photos are him doesn't really matter because the cell phone data doesn't lie. And the stalking also doesn't lie. The months of driving near that house repeatedly, even showing up on Bluetooth within the home. There's a lot of damning evidence there. Will he plead guilty or not guilty? That is a question that we hope to find out soon.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast
With Tony Bruschi.
What do you think? Should the trial be moved? Should it stay in Moscow, Idaho? Can it stay in Moscow, Idaho? Can he have a fair trial? Let us know what you think. 888-5-KILLER, 888-554-5537. You can call that 24/7. Give your thoughts on this case or any of the cases that we're following for you. Love to hear your voice. My name is Tony Bruschi. You can follow me on Twitter at TonyBPod. Until next time, thanks for listening.